For anyone that may not be familiar, White Bison is a Native American, Alaska Native nonprofit organization located in Colorado Springs, Colorado. We provide culturally based programs, trainings, and resources that are geared towards recovery and prevention of alcoholism and substance use disorders. We have programs for adult treatment, youth prevention, whole family wellness, healthy fatherhood, healthy motherhood, programs that address healing from grief and trauma, programs that focus on re-entry back into the community from reincarceration or treatment. If you would like to learn more about our programs, please visit whitebison.org. Each month, White Bison will be offering a free webinar that aligns with our theme of the month. Our webinar today is on physical wellness. You can recover from food addiction. At this time, I would like to introduce our presenter, Kate Reaney. Kate has been part of 12-step recovery for over 25 years with 19 years of recovery from food addiction. Kate actively works the 12 steps out of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, sponsors women, and leads and mentors them on the path of recovery, leads Big Book workshops and retreats across the US and on Zoom worldwide. She brings a wealth of personal experience and background from her own lived experience of food addiction. Today, Kate maintains a healthy weight and has her heart set on sharing a message of love, hope, recovery, and living life free of those deadly addictions. She has a message to carry and one that could change your life or the life of someone you love. Thank you for being with us here today, Kate. And with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to you.
Oh, thank you, Taylor. And thank you to all of you who have shown up today. It's a courageous move to come and listen to someone like myself speak and just begin to investigate that possibility. So I honor and appreciate your courage and your spirit's true desire to be willing to hear a truth and potentially be offered the opportunity to heal. So if you'll indulge me for a minute, I always like to start by getting quiet for a few moments. And what I would like is if each one of you can just go to that place, deep within you, or a place where you've felt safe in your life, and really center in to that place that is pure creative spirit, whether that is inside you that you refer to that, or to the greater creative intelligence of the universe. And then I'll just say a brief prayer and get started. Great Creator, help us to be open to hear a message presented today, and please help us to be present and set aside everything we think we know, so we may come with an open mind, ready for a new experience. Amen. Well, as Taylor mentioned, my name's Kate, and I have the illness of addiction. Although my addiction manifested itself primarily in food. I am also an alcoholic with over 25 years completely clean of alcohol. My primary addiction, however, was always food. And I didn't know that, but food for me was the drug, so to speak, that was first available and most readily available and sort of the most easily accepted. Because where I grew up, it wasn't seen as a drug. And so to speak, food isn't typically a drug for people that don't use it like I do. However, for me, food was a drug, not just food. It had way more meaning than something of which it's meant, which is to nourish my body for its health and well-being. Food was not food to me. Food was a drug, and food was medicine for a really tortured, pained spirit, so to speak. And for a long time, food to me was really, when I look back now, when I first started using food, it was a source of safety to me. You know, we start using these things not because, you know, we think they're bad or terrible. I started using it because it worked. Food made me feel safe. It made me feel like I was going to be okay. It gave me an awful lot of comfort. And it was also made me feel like I had a sense of control in an environment in which I grew up and in which I had very little control. So let me tell you a little about myself before I get into that a little bit more. But I'm originally from New Zealand. I grew up in New Zealand and into a home of two loving parents, very loving parents. There wasn't any active addiction in my family that I was aware of at the time. But I do come from a family on both sides of my family that does have very active addiction. And I grew up in, like I say, a really loving household. And I remember my early childhood, you know, really feeling very connected, particularly to nature. I got a lot of comfort by being outside, lying in the grass and really feeling that whole natural spirit and the natural pulses and rhythms of nature. And I think as little kids, we're all born connected. We're all born authentic. You know, when you look at a brand new baby that's just born, they're pure. You can see their very essence. You know, they're not, they haven't yet developed those ways of protecting themselves that I later developed, and food was particularly one of them, along with many other ways that I tried to protect myself. But when I was first born, I felt very connected to the spirit of the universe, so to speak. And like I say, a primary way that I connected to that and do today is through nature and being in nature. Then, you know, growing up in this household, I never remember food as a young child being a problem for me. I just ate when I felt like eating, didn't eat when I didn't feel like eating, and it was never a big issue. Around the age of 3 years old, you know, a very unfortunate event happened in my family, which when I look back now, it really tore my family apart. My brother was very suddenly, he very suddenly died from a very unfortunate event. And it really devastated my family. My parents were only in their 20s, and my father, I think my brother died on a Friday or Saturday, and my father went back to work on a Monday like nothing ever happened. And my mother's bedroom door was closed. And as a young 3-year-old child, I wasn't, you know, able to go in there. And so I remember these overwhelming feelings of fear as a young child at that age, and so desperately, I think, really looking for that safety in my parents, who just weren't able to, they did their very best, but weren't able to give it to me in the way that I needed it at that time as a young child. And so I developed these fears of that the world's not safe. The world is not safe. And as a young child, I tried to, not consciously, but figure out a way how to keep safe. You know, my whole mode of operating became, how do I stay safe? And I began doing whatever I could to be safe. One way that I felt safe was using food. And when I ate, it soothed those fears in me. It gave me, in a sense, a lot of false courage. And it really made me feel safe. It made me feel like I was going to be okay. And it took away that fear that I had as a child. I also developed other ways of behaving. And one of those ways was to be really, really good. I think that addiction, in my experience, can take you one of two ways. And mine made me into almost the perfect child. And when I look back, I wasn't the perfect child. I was a child really driven by fear. And I was trying to do whatever I could to find that safety that wasn't feeling inside it. My world felt very unsafe. And so I became very good. I became a chameleon. When I look back now, I became whatever I thought you wanted me to be, just so that you wouldn't leave me. Because I had this horrible fear that if people that I needed would leave me, I too was going to die like my brother. And so I became a very good child and became whatever I felt that my parents wanted me to be. And this was a behavior that, went throughout my life for many, many years. In and out of relationships, I would just get into a relationship and become whatever I thought the other person wanted me to be, so that they wouldn't get angry with me, they wouldn't leave me, they would like me. I was a real chameleon with sort of my internal compass was broken. I lost that sense of integrity. I just became whatever I needed to be so I could get what I thought I need, which was safety and security. And one of the ways, like I say, that I really medicated those fears was using food. And food would make me feel like everything was going to be okay. And it really worked. At the age of about 13 years old, I had the opportunity to come to the United States. And I came to the United States on my own with a young sports team at that time, and left my family. And that again set off in me so many fears. I felt completely overwhelmed. And with leaving my family, I was really in a lot of fear. And again, I used food. I can remember very, very consciously using food to take away that fear and make me feel like I was going to be okay. And that worked for me for many, many years. And as addiction does, is it what started out working started somewhere to turn on me. And I started to need more and more and eat greater and greater volumes of food to try and medicate all of those fears and all of those feelings that I was having that I just didn't know how to deal with at the time. And so on through the years, my addiction progressed. I would at times eat vast amounts uncontrollably, and then a few days later think, man, I've really got to stop doing this. I've seriously got to stop eating like this. And I tried all kinds of ways, like I did when I was drinking alcohol, to stop doing that. And some of them worked for a period of time. That's what was confusing. Some of it worked, and then it would quit working and I'd go back to it. I always ended up going back to it because I never had any real solution. I was just trying to quit without a sufficient substitute, without, as I see it now, I was separated, separated from myself, from that spirit that's within each of us. And being separated from who I really was is such a painful place to be that I had to medicate that. And food was my medication. And what recovery and the process of recovering from food addiction is it's bringing me back into alignment with who I really am and with that great spirit that's within each one of us. This is about coming home to who we really are and living in conscious alignment with who we are. And when we do that, it takes away the need for the food to use it like a drug. It takes away the need for the food, the alcohol, the whatever people are using to medicate that separation from who we really are. So my food addiction got worse to the point that I continued to eat. I I weighed over 200 pounds at one time in my life, and I've weighed as low as probably somewhere in the low 90s, because I just went from one extreme to the other, really trying to control that which I can't control. I had the belief that if I just tried hard enough, I would be able to quit doing what I was doing. And I wasn't. I failed every time. Every time I tried to control it, I was not able to do it. And around 24, 25 years ago, I was fortunate enough to be brought into the rooms of a 12-step program, and that was Alcoholics Anonymous. And I knew that there was a solution in a 12-step process for me, but I didn't know how to apply it with food. I understood that as an alcoholic, I couldn't drink anymore, but I didn't know how to do this with respect to food, because I thought, well, you've got to eat 3 times a day. But I could also see that me trying to control and figure out how to eat right was just like the alcoholic trying to manage and control their drinking. You know, I'm not able to do that. For some reason, that is broken in me. I can try and figure it out. And the more I try and figure it out, the more I'm in that mental obsession. I'm stuck in obsession about it. And the only way for me to kill that obsession about what's in the refrigerator or, you know, what someone else is eating was to eat it. Right. But then my problem is that when I stop doing that, I've got the obsession. I'm thinking about the food. I'm thinking about how to eat normally. I'm trying to figure out what's the right amount for me. I'm trying to figure out what I should weigh. You know, all of that is just the mental obsession. And I got to the point where, just like the alcoholic, I was really completely defeated and realized that I had been trying to manage and control my eating, as opposed to giving up the drug and all of my control around that, or all of my delusion of control, that I could control it. I can't. When it comes to food, for me, it's broken. I don't have the ability to control it. I don't have the ability to figure it out. I had to give that up completely in order to get freedom from it, you know, and that took a long time for me to get there, because, you know, with any addiction, you know, I'll give up anything else, but just don't take the food. You know, like, you can take the alcohol, you can take the, you know, the medication, you can take the overworking, you can take all these things, but don't take the food. No. And that's the one thing that I really needed to completely give up in order to find my freedom and my release from that. You know, it's that terrible paradox, you know, we surrender to win. And that to me was where it all began, is when I gave up all control and all of my delusion of control around food and what I should eat and how much I should eat and what I should weigh and when all of that. And I was able to find a person, a sponsor ahead of me, who was able to show me and share with me how they had done that and how they had given up the drug. I'm sorry, I thought I'd turned that off. And how they had given up that drug to be able to, you know, really get well. And so I began on a path of recovery, which, like I say, it really begins with completely giving up the food. And it took me years to do that, because for a lot of years, I really tried to manage and control it and figure out how to eat right and all of that. And I was never able to do it. And what happened for me is, to get the freedom from it, I just completely gave up that fight and asked somebody to help me, and then followed their suggestions and how they had found a way out of this. And that's step one, if you like. You know, that's base camp, right? Because for me, as an alcoholic, I can't get well if I'm still drinking alcohol. I get that, right? I have to get sober from the alcohol, and then I can actually begin the path of recovery, which through me was through the 12 steps of recovery. And the same applies with the food. For me to get well, I have to completely give up that drug before I can actually really get well. Because when I'm seeking power elsewhere in the food, I don't really need a relationship with a higher power or the creative intelligence of the universe, because I'm using something else. So for me, that was the beginning. And then, my recovery, was really then centered exactly around the 12 steps of recovery, in terms of I was able to set the food aside and admit for myself that I can't handle this at all. So completely lay that drug down, and then I could begin to get well. But it took me a very, very long time to get there, because I really wanted to be able to manage and control it myself, right? I didn't like what it looked like to need to do what I do today to get freedom from it, but I would not give that up for anything today. The freedom that I have from that today, and to just not be affected by it, is such a blessing, such a freedom that I didn't know existed. And then with, the second step for me was about coming to believe that there was some creative intelligence that could restore me to sanity. Someone that wasn't thinking about food all the time, wasn't obsessing about it, wasn't obsessing about their weight. And I believed that because I had heard a message from somebody who was speaking, perhaps like myself today, that had that experience. I got to see evidence that it worked in a person that was standing before me at the time. So I became willing to try what they had done to get well, even though a lot of it sounded really silly to me at the time, I have to tell you. But I became willing to try what they had done, because I was just sick and tired of being where I was. I didn't want to waste my life thinking about food, thinking about my weight, thinking about where I could eat, I just didn't want to live my life like that. I wanted to really live my life. I wanted to live life and just be in a healthy body and not have my weight go up and down. And I wanted that freedom. So I became willing to follow what someone that had a solution was doing. And that really led me into that third step, being willing to turn my life and will over to the creative intelligence. It's really turning it back to that power that we, are all born with as little children, that authentically and just innately, know what to do, know who they are, know what they like, know what they don't like. They're just pure and honest and authentic. And that's what I wanted. So I became willing to do whatever it was to bring me back into right relationship with that creative intelligence. What I love about the 12-step programs is this isn't about finding out who we are. This is about getting rid of who we're not. Those things that for me that I developed, those sort of facades or the cheap knockoff, if you like, of Kate, those ways I developed to protect myself in very early childhood, whether it was, being really quiet and not saying my opinion so I wouldn't get yelled at, or whether it was being whatever you wanted me to be so that you wouldn't leave me. It was coming back to being who I really am, just like a little child, pure, authentic, and real. And so for me, a lot of that work was done by going through the fourth step, as outlined directly in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and finding out those things that were blocking me from this power, that were really blocking me from being able to access that intuition, that intuitive voice, that authentic self that we're all born with. We're all born with knowing that. We're all born knowing that. And it was a matter of identifying those things which were blocking me from that power, that were blocking. And the number one thing for me was food. So that had to be the first to go. And then it was, like I say, a matter of identifying these ways that I had used. They were really what looked like to me my survival skills or my tools of how I was trying to protect myself and life and keep myself safe. And a lot of those, like I say, worked when I was younger. It was just that they were no longer working, and they were blocking me from being able to be authentic and be here in our rightful place that we all have and be who we really are. And so the 4th step was a beautiful process to help me identify those things and then share those with another person, and then become willing to sort of lay down my weapons, so to speak. Lay down those ways that I had used for so long to protect myself, and become willing to have that creative intelligence, to have the creator restore me to who I really am, to that pure essence and being and spirit that we are all born into this world being, and returning to that. And I became willing to do that based on pretty much the evidence that what I had been doing was not working. And I was miserable and unhappy when I was being someone that I'm not. All I ever wanted was to be who I am. I used to say that all the time. I just want to be me, And so it was a matter of getting rid of those things that I wasn't, because nothing occurs in a vacuum. When we get rid of what we're not, who we are automatically shows up, and that was the process that the 12 steps took me through. And then steps 8 and 9, those amend steps, I was taught that amend meant to fix, which meant to right the wrong. And, a lot of the wrong for me, if you like, was faulty or wrong belief. I really believed that I had to be something different than I was to make sure that people wouldn't leave me and would love me. And what I've come to find out through this process is the more we are who we are, the more people love us. Like, I was told one time that 30% of people are going to like me no matter what I do. 30% of people aren't going to like me no matter what I do. And the other 30% don't really care one way or another. And that's exactly how it's meant to be. If everybody likes me, I'm still being a phony. And I don't want to be a phony any longer. I spent many, many years of my life being like that. And today I just want to be Kate. I just want to be Kate. That's who I am. And that's not like it used to be, which is different in this circumstance from different in this circumstance from different in this circumstance, so that I had to, think about what I'd told different people and be different in different situations. I just get to show up and be who I am today. And so a lot of my amends were being honest with people about things that I had lied about and clearing that up in the past, and starting to show up as I really am and just say to them, that this is who I am. This is how I eat today. I have the illness of addiction. It is life-threatening for me, just like alcohol or just like any other addiction. Don't think that because it's food, it's not as serious. This is probably one of the most serious addictions, killing more people than many, many other addictions. So for me, getting well from this addiction has, it's given me life. It's given me life back. It's given me the ability to really be that pure spirit and pure essence without all these other ways that I have used through my life of protecting myself. And then the remainder of the program, really steps 10 and 11 particularly, are a way that I continue to clean up any mistakes I make today, because as human beings, the way we learn is through making mistakes. You watch kids. I love watching kids. They don't even have any shame about their mistakes. If you watch them when they're really young, if you watch a young child who's learning to walk, they might stand up and hold on to a coffee table, and then they might fall down, and they don't go, oh, I'm so stupid. How could I do that? I can't believe I did that. They just get back up and try again. No shame, no criticism. I mean, and they may try many times. They may fall down and whack their head on the coffee table and cry for a while, you know, which is what I do when I make mistakes at times. I like to have a cry about it. No. And then we get back up and we try again and we try again. And it is through the making of those mistakes that I actually learn how to do something. That's how we learn as human beings, and that's how we grow. And steps 10 and 11, particularly step 10, gives me the opportunity to look at on a daily basis the mistakes I made today and ask the Creator what I need to do to fix that. You know, to learn the lesson from the present situation. Otherwise, I'm going to get that same lesson presented over and over again until I learn it. That's what my food addiction was, constantly trying how to figure out how to eat right, how to eat like this, how to eat like that. And I had to try that until I just couldn't. I just finally got it that I don't know why, but for some reason in me that's broken and I don't know how to do it. And then I reached out for help. When all I had tried didn't work, and I became willing to try a different way. And that to me is where the freedom comes, is in really laying down those things that don't work and haven't worked usually for a long time before we get here, and become willing to listen to a message like this, and be willing to do something different. And then, you know, step 11 for me is really about seeking that which I always desperately sought, which is that relationship with the Creator. You know, like I must, for me as an addict, I must have that thing that I used to go to food for, or I'm not interested in what you're selling, right? I must have that which I went to food for. And for me, it was that feeling of connection, that feeling of being at one, at being at peace, at having everything feel like it was going to be okay. That's what food did for me. And that's what I have today without having to use that drug. And that to me is what recovery is about, being brought back into right relationship with that creative power that is within each one of us. And when we do that, it takes away the need for the drug. And I guess, you know, just in closing here, in case to leave time if anyone has any questions, there really is a solution. There really is a solution. You don't ever have to eat the way you may be eating right now, ever again. And perhaps more importantly, you don't ever have to feel the way you're feeling ever again. You can recover from this. You can be completely free from food and worried about weight, and have complete freedom from that, and live a really good life that makes sense to you. So thank you for your time today. I really appreciate and honor your courage to show up at a webinar such as this, and your time, and that seeking from inside each one of you to find a solution that's right for you. So with that, in closing, I'll hand this back to Taylor, and like I say, thank you all for your time.
Thank you very much, Kate. That was wonderful. So we will go ahead and open this up. If anybody has any questions, you can either type them into the chat box or raise your hand, and you can do that by clicking the reactions button at the bottom and then click raise hand.
Hi, my name is Phyllis. I just wanted to say thank you for sharing your story and encouraging me to keep on figuring out that. Um, but when you were talking about your story, it made me think of something that I haven't thought about, but about when I was a child and how I was taught eating, or how like I had to think about how it was for me back then. And I was like, it's kind of like the same thing that it is today, because I I'm a like I have two children, and like we have to um sometimes use the government to help, feed our family. So that was the case when I was young. So I was thinking about it, and I was like, I had already been like, because my parents were struggling, and I remember when food stamp day would come, and like it was like a good, like a cool moment, or like, so I feel like that kind of tricked me into that, and so I was thinking it's the EBT trap, because that's what they call the food stamps, or the food that they put it on your on the card here in, like in New Mexico. So I was like, it's called I said it was the EBT trap then, and it is now, because um I'm struggling real hard with how to like, I'm teaching myself how to eat. So now I finally got down that in the morning time I need this, and but still it's just like, it's a struggle, that because I'm about 200 no 780 days sober from alcohol. So
Great. Well,
the
congratulations.
more I get into those days, the number gets bigger, the more I'm like looking at how my eating habits, how I think after I eat something, or how I like. Earlier today I said, oh my gosh, I got to eat something, I don't know what. So I went and I grabbed a bunch of cherry tomatoes, and my daughter was looking at me, and I was like, I don't know, I'm just going to try this. And I started stuffing myself with cherry tomatoes and a zucchini. I said, okay, how do you feel now? And I said, I feel a little bit better about myself, that I didn't, grab a bag of chips, or grab something that I'm not supposed to eat. So it's just encouraging. I just wanted to say that it was encouraging me to keep on like fighting this struggle of my food addiction, and keep on finding that formula to keep me in my spirit. Because you're right, when I do eat stuff that's like not good for me, I can feel it way down my spirit. Before, I never used to feel that, but it's because I know my sobriety plays a big part in that. But I just wanted to thank you for sharing and encourage me to stay on my food health sobriety journey. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, Phyllis. I so appreciate, and I really honor your sobriety from alcohol. That is amazing that you've been sober as long as you have, and I really encourage you to really honor your spirit and keep seeking for that for yourself. And yeah, just want to say congratulations on that, and encourage you to keep going with that. And I very much relate to what you're saying. I got sober from alcohol, and for me, food became a bigger problem, because it was kind of like when I look back now, I removed one drug and then sort of switched seats on the Titanic. I started using something else to medicate that separation that I had from my spirit. And that's where, I had to give up that drug as well, food, as I've just talked to you about, but then really go for the solution, which is right relationship with the Creator. And that's what the 12-step process, which I've been involved in for many, many years, because that's what I really wanted. The food or the alcohol, it looks like the thing, but it ain't the thing. It looks like it's going to fix me. And for a period of time, don't get me wrong, it did make me feel better, but then it became a problem. And so I needed to, really put down that drug as well, and then really seek what I was really looking for, which was that feeling of peace and relief and freedom in my spirit. So I encourage you to keep going, and I really honor your path. And I think you're incredibly courageous. And thank you for being here, Phyllis. And I encourage you to reach out for help and support. Don't try and do this alone.
Yes, thank you, Phyllis, for sharing. Looks like we also have a question in the chat box.
Oh,
Tara asked, are you in the OA program? Said that she's been attending since January and has a sponsor that she calls every day.
oh, that's great. Oh, well, yeah, congratulations, Tara. And that's, I'm so excited that you're on the path. That you're on the path. I was first introduced to OA about 25 years ago, and this was only my experience, and I don't know that this is true today at all, but my experience when I came to OA was that the meeting I went to, people in the meeting were still actively using food as a drug. There was people there that said, well, I binged yesterday, but I'm doing great today. And I just thought, you obviously don't eat like I eat. I never want to do this ever again. I wanted freedom from my food addiction the same way I got freedom from alcohol, whereas I never want to do this again. It was so bad. My binges was huge. I didn't go into that, but the volumes of food that I would consume and then black out. I went into sugar blackouts, and just felt so hungover and would have blurred vision and would be shaking from sugar withdrawal, and have major headaches and things from the sugar. I never wanted to do that anymore. I just didn't want to waste any more of my life thinking about food, binging on food, then starving myself or exercising. I wanted to be completely free of it. And so my experience with OA 25 years ago was that where I came in, people were still doing that, but I'd never wanted to do it again. So a lot of my recovery came through finding an individual who wasn't doing that. And you may have that in OA, and if you do, I suggest you continue. I found an individual who was completely free from the food and following a specific food plan and able to show me how to give up that drug to get freedom from it. There are many 12-step programs for food. There's one called FA, Food Addicts in Recovery Anonymous, and there's many other 12-step programs. I think as long as you find someone who has a solution and has the kind of recovery you want and the freedom from that drug, I would encourage you to continue with that. And then really, once we put down the drug, it's about developing this relationship with the creator through the 12-step program. So that is my experience with that. So I hope that helps answer your question anyway, Tara. Or Tara, I'm sorry if I misspoke.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, you're welcome. I love you on your screen with all your bright, sparkly lights. I think they're so pretty.
Christy said she's been using intermittent fasting and her eating habits are improving.
Wow. I don't have any experience with that myself, Christy. I just have experiences of basically binging and then starving myself. And for many, many years, I haven't had to do that now. Many, many years I've eaten three meals, 3 times a day, 3 really good meals, and have maintained the same weight I'm in for 20 something years. So I don't have any experience with that, so I can't really speak to that, but thank you for sharing your experience.
I'm glad that that's working well for you. I think it definitely depends on your body type. My sister did intermittent fasting and it worked wonders for her, and I tried it for about 6 months and it did nothing. So I finally was just like, well, so I'm glad it's working for you. Do we have any more questions or comments? Okay, well, Kate, I would just like to thank you again for being here and doing this webinar. I'm going to go ahead and stop recording, and then I'm going to do just a little closing spiel here. So thank you again for being here and for listening to our physical wellness webinar. You can recover from food addiction.